this was my charge. Michelle sent me a note and said, I need you to talk on this. And I said, well, no. And then she said, you don't say no to Michelle. So I'm like, okay. So here I am. So that was my charge. But of course, we all know it's more than just going away for 30 days. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. And I hope a decent follow-up to Dave's presentation from yesterday. So this is me. I just, the day before I got here, finished the 3rd edition of Relax, Focus, Succeed, and it should be out in print by the end of next month. So today we're going to talk about how you unchain yourself from your business. And it's more than just taking a day off, right? And I mean unchain. I mean, live your life on your terms, and your business should do that. And here's a thing I always tell people. If you are in small business, your business exists to support your dreams and your lifestyle. Period. So when people say, oh, it's a lifestyle business, it should be a lifestyle business. Whatever your lifestyle you want, your business should make that happen. If you work for a big corporation, you work for Microsoft, your job is to make more money for the investors. If you work for a company you own, your job is to create your dream and make your business pay for it. I firmly believe that. And, if you say, well, I've just been in this 10 years and I'm still struggling, it's like, okay, do you know where you're going? Do you have a North Star? Do you have a place where you say, that's where I want to get to, so that you can build a plan to get there? Because if you just got in the business and you say, okay, I'm going to do everything I did yesterday and do that again and again and again, pretty soon 10, 20, 30 years goes by and you're no closer to your dream. And maybe you don't even have a dream. So you need to think much bigger than your business. Your business plays a role in your life and your ultimate success. I also have some AI graphics. I use Gemini. I'm shocked at how many of these came out with one prompt. But I just want to warn people, some of you will be insulted. And that's okay, because I'm leaving today, so it doesn't matter. This one, I used to tell this joke when I first became an independent consultant. Oh, I only work half days, but I get to pick the 12 hours. And everybody goes, ha, ha, ha. Which is funny until it's true. And then it's not funny anymore because you're working all these 12-hour days. And you got to figure out how to get your life back. And you may not have planned how to get your life back. You may not even know what your life would look like without work. We dig into our work and we get carried away. And so, we got to make sure that we keep an eye on that and pull back from it. And, part of my philosophy is that you have to take time to recharge your batteries. And sometimes I meet people who have no hobbies. And it's not just because they're young and ambitious and working in their business. I've met people in their 50s and 60s who have no hobbies. One guy that I was talking to, coaching, he literally was about to retire. He was mid-60s. And he said, I'm going to try golf. And I said, why are you going to try golf? And he said, because I don't know if I'll like it. And when I retire and take up golf, I'm going to know I'm going to like it. And I've never golfed before, but I got to try something so that when I retire, I have something to do. And it's almost like that's a little late to start finding a hobby. Hobbies bring you great joy. They allow you to escape from work and get into what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls the flow, right? And the flow is when you're head down, you're doing something, you're enjoying it so much, the time passes and you don't even recognize that time has passed, right? Sometimes we do that in our work. A lot of times we do it in our hobby. And why that's important is you need to know what it feels like to be lost in time, to be so lost in what you love that you're not paying attention to all the little stuff going on around you. And as soon as you know how that feels, you can work on trying to figure out how to recreate that. And maybe you'll get to a point where you say, well, I played racquetball for so many years, now it's going to be pickleball, because I can't play racquetball anymore because, the joints are too old. But you still know that there's a place in a game where you can find that feeling, right? The same thing is true in your business. Same thing is true in your life. And there's also the case, and I know some of you have seen this, people retire, and then you got like a man and a wife who are now old people who are not used to having more than 2 days together with each other, and they drive each other insane. That's not a good thing. That's not a fun place to be in life. So you have to build your separate life. You have to build a life that has meaning outside of your business. And that takes work, and it takes a plan. How many here have at least one employee? Excellent. I thought that would be the case. So, how many of you can take off Monday without any further notice and your business goes on happily without you? All right, much smaller number. And I'm serious, if you think about this, if you just didn't show up on Monday, like, I'm not talking about a planned day off, I'm talking about a do not show up on Monday. What happens in your business? And think about it. For all of those who didn't just raise your hand, what would happen? Well, with luck, techs would go into the system and they'd look at new tickets. With luck, you have a service manager who can help guide who goes where and what. Somebody would figure out if you have some meeting on your calendar and either call them and tell them you're not going to be there, whatever. Think about it honestly. What would happen? And that's fine. That's a day. And a day is a beautiful thing. And it's actually not a bad test. Because we all think we have a plan until there's a disaster. Right? And we all know in this business, you test recovery plans. You test your disaster plans. Well, can you disappear for 3 days, 5 days, a week? What is your plan? And have you stress tested your plan to escape? Here's an important safety tip. Who can open your phone? Who can get to your 2FA? Who can get to your passwords? If you are in a car accident and end up in the hospital for 3 weeks on the way home from this conference, I'm not trying to put you down, but I'm just saying, what would happen? Who could make sure that things move forward? Who can get into the bank account? Who can make sure that bills get paid? There's all these things that have to happen in your business. And they're not going to happen by themselves. And sometimes we blissfully go through life saying, well, that won't happen to me. And it's literally like dentists who say, I don't worry about HIPAA because I don't know anybody who's ever been fined. I don't know anybody who's ever had a problem. I don't know anybody who's ever been sued. Okay, great. So you think you're exempt from what could come down the road? You are not. So what will happen in your business? And a lot of people don't want to think about things. There's people who don't have wills because they don't want to think about dying. Well, I have bad news for you. Every single person in this room is going to die eventually. And that can go the way you want it to or not. Right? Same thing in your business. You will probably leave your business at some point. With luck, it'll be on your terms, at a time you planned, in a way you planned. But I can't guarantee that, and neither can you. So think about who has access to all the things in your business. And again, that needs to be something you document, write down, test, verify, change your password, and then suddenly these people can't get into your password vault anymore. Okay, you've got to make sure that's part of the documentation. So I have a handout. I'll ask you to hand these around. And if you think about things going on in your business, you disappear, what's the first thing that breaks? Is it service delivery? Is it invoicing? Is it client relationships? Sales? What does not happen first? And that's probably your first task, is to go make sure that thing gets fixed. All right. And it's just like anything else in business. If you fix that thing, what's the next thing that breaks? The first several pages of this are a lengthy set of questions that I think you should look at some point, but not necessarily today. It's worth thinking about all of the things in your business that have to happen. In particular, what happens in 30 days? Because tomorrow's one thing, Monday's one thing. Over the course of 30 days, you probably need to figure out a way to pay your employees at least once, if not twice. invoices have to go out, money has to come in, sales have to happen, right? The rent has to be paid, the electricity has to be paid, tick, 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 tick. A lot of stuff has to happen in your business. And how much of that stuff cannot happen without you? And it's literally worth making a list. Tick down this list. How many of these things can happen if you are not there, if you're not actively involved in it? Because if you don't know what is relying only on you, you can't take the next step, which is to figure out how you extract yourself from the equation. Right now, I hope you have somebody who steps in when you step out, right? It's a work day. Who's taking care of business at home? And there's probably somebody for every one of you. But if not, that is literally step number one, because you can't take a day off without having somebody take over. At one point, I was traveling around, blogging and speaking and so forth, and I literally got this note from somebody who said, I call bullshit. You say that you're successful and you're running a successful managed service business, but I always see you at conferences. I see you going to other countries. I see you traveling everywhere, right? You're in a place where there's no cell phone service, and you're telling me that your business runs without you. And I don't think that's true. And I thought it was so funny because I'm like, do you know what a successful business is? Like, what is your vision of a successful business if it is not one that runs without you? Ultimately, your job is to become the owner, not the manager. And owners don't go into the workplace every day, right? Think about a Subway sandwich shop. The owner is not making sandwiches. The owner probably owns 3 stores and never shows up at any of them except to make sure that the lights are still on and the employees, are cashing their checks. So how are you going to step out of that, right? And think about who steps up. Many of you have an office manager. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think your first employee, if you don't have one yet, your first employee should be an administrative assistant because they can take the most load off of you for the least amount of money. Usually then you get a tech. That tech works his way up, and as we talked yesterday, becomes the service manager, whether they should be the service manager or not. Right? So who steps up? And for some people, it's, I got nobody except I got a friend who's going to come in and help when things go wrong. Right? So I can call. I know somebody who thought he had stepped out of his business to the point where he could be gone anytime he wanted. And he would be out of the office sometimes for 2 weeks. But he hadn't escaped yet. And we'll come back to that because escaping is a key piece of what you have to put your sights on. The goal isn't 30 days per se. It's eventually to be gone a week and a month. And then eventually you only drop by to, get some birthday cake and to make sure that the, cash is flowing through your bank account. And other than that, your business should run on its own. And a lot of pieces have to come into play to make that happen. My motto for more than 30 years has been, nothing happens by itself. If you want your business to run without you, you have to set that as a goal. You have to write it down. You have to make a step-by-step plan. And I know it's a big task. It's a huge task. But how does an ant eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. You need to divide that task into manageable pieces and execute it. I'm a firm believer that whatever your belief system is today, it determines your ability to delegate. Your willingness to delegate and your ability to delegate. And that directly affects your freedom. By which I mean freedom not just from your business, but freedom to do anything you want. And you have to work on that. Again, you got to make that happen. So I'm going to walk through some stuff, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because you have it on the back of the handout. But the first step is where a lot of people get stuck, sometimes for 10, 15 years. Only I can do this. Only I can invoice because I know all of these clients and I have relationships with them, and she's not going to be expecting a bill for $700. So I'm going to adjust that a little bit. And I don't trust anybody else to make those adjustments. I don't trust anybody else to give away free labor. I don't trust anybody else to send out the invoices or to know who gets billed and who doesn't. or you have a bunch of crap that is not written down, everybody's charged a different price, and you have nothing standardized. So nobody else can do the billing because you haven't made it possible for them to do the billing. And it's because you have this firm belief only you can do it. On the technical side, our industry is filled with people who believe that technical prowess is the most important thing. I have to be the smartest one in the office. I have to know all the technology. I have to understand the technology or my company can't sell it. I have to be the one that when nobody else can fix it, I can fix it. That is not true. And when you're really successful, you get to the point where you're like, okay, we got this new technology. I don't have to learn it. I just have to figure out who's going to learn it, right? So the first step is you are stuck, which means you have no freedom. If there's a whole bunch of stuff in your company where you're the only one who can do it, well, guess what? You have to show up every single day or you don't have a company. Next, you figure out, so, okay, I can get one thing, and it goes either one way or the other. It's either I can delegate this task to the right person, or I can delegate this task to that person, right? I've got one person, I've got an office manager, I trust them to get the invoicing out. And if you haven't got somebody else doing your invoicing, let me tell you the greatest secret that nobody gives you in managed services. As soon as you, the owner, stop touching invoicing, you make more money for one simple reason. Now they've got a set of rules. Everybody gets billed what they're supposed to get billed, and there's no forgiveness. And then if a client calls and says, hey, I really wasn't expecting this, you can choose to give them their money back. But in the meantime, everybody else has been billed what they're supposed to be billed, and suddenly you've got this, 3 or 4% increase in revenue because you're not giving away free labor. So extracting yourself can actually make your business more profitable. But so now you got, okay, I got that job, that person can do that job. Great. I can now step out and know that invoicing has been taken care of. But I still have to be involved in the service board. I still have to make sure that the techs are where they're supposed to be. I have to approve every sale, right? On and on and on. You're still mostly stuck in your business. Then you get to the point where you say, okay, if I define the right thing, I can then delegate it. And so now I've got process and procedures so that somebody else can take this thing, go down the checklist, and be as successful as I am, right? Because you're still the gold standard, right? You're still stuck in this mindset that only you can do it, but now you're going to train somebody to do it almost as good as you, right? And then you begin to say, okay, I can do this. I find the right people, I find the right jobs, I put them together, it becomes easier. And you relax a little bit, and you say, okay, I can delegate. I like delegating. Delegating's a good thing. And that means you can take a day off. You can take a week off. One of the strangest things that happened when I was growing my business is that I came to this realization one day. I needed to mail a package on a weekend. So I went into the office and I couldn't find the shipping supplies. And I didn't know our UPS account or how to get into it or how to make a label. I literally couldn't mail a package in my own business. And I had this, revelation. Oh shit, I built a business I can step out of. Because there are things that people know that I don't know. That's actually a really good sign. That's a healthy sign in your business. A similar kind of thing happened about 10 years later when I saw an invoice just casually, and I said, who is that? And it was a client I'd never heard of. I hadn't sold them, I hadn't negotiated anything, I hadn't signed a contract, and they were a client, and they relied on us for tech support, and they were part of what kept my lights on, and I'd never heard their name before. That's also a beautiful thing. That's a moment of freedom, but it only comes when somebody else is doing the things that you today think only you can do. Then eventually you say, this is awesome. Everything can be delegated. It's a beautiful thing, and you start delegating everything you can. And then, if you're lucky, you can take a month off, because now everything, literally everything's being delegated. Somebody else is paying the rent. Somebody else is making sure that the technicians are paid. Somebody else is managing the service board, right? Somebody else is managing everything, and I'm eager to let them do that. And this is where you finally get to the 30 days. And you notice there's 2 more columns left, because that's not the pinnacle. Taking a month off is not the pinnacle. You know, this friend of mine who, used to think he was free because he took 2 weeks off, he called in every single day. So he was out of the office, but he wasn't free. He was out of the office, but he was heavily tethered. And even if he was in a country where he had to go walk to a wired telephone to get in touch with the office, he checked in every day. And in a lot of ways, when you find yourself doing that, you are treating your employees like children. If they cannot be trusted to do what you know they need to do, then you either have the wrong employees or you have the wrong processes. But for sure, you have the wrong mindset. You have to be willing to eagerly delegate and walk away. And that's when you get to asking yourself, why am I doing this thing? Like, this is a special technology. Why do I have to learn this? Why do I have to be involved in this? I'm not an accountant. Why am I doing accounting? Right? I'm not a salesperson. Why am I doing sales? Right? Every job in your business has a specialty. And you need to be the one who decides that you're going to hand that off to somebody else. And when you get to the point where you delegate first, that is a beautiful thing. So for example, you say, oh, we're going to adopt this new technology. Who can do that? And there's no question that it would be you, because it won't be you. That's a level of maturity a lot of people never, ever, ever get to. Where you say, okay, here's this AI stuff. You go learn AI. You figure out what our company's going to do. You figure out how we're going to make money with this. Right? If you do that first, now you've got freedom. Now you can take 30 days off and then take another 30 days. And take 30 days anytime you want. And that's where you actually have freedom from your business. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do that. You can choose to go to work. Most of us love our jobs or we wouldn't be doing it. So you can choose to not take your 30 days, but you'll know that you have that freedom. And finally, you ask, why would I be doing any of this? And that's when you step out completely and somebody else runs your business. And the third revelation I had of when my business was maturing is when I elevated my brother to be the president of the company, and I went off and wrote books. And, that was the path down to me occasionally going to Monday morning meetings, and eventually I put my desk out in the front so that I would be able to hear what's going on, because I kind of missed being in my business, but I didn't make any important decisions. I didn't set the budget. I didn't give people raises. I didn't make new sales. I didn't do anything in that business except cash checks back in the day. That is true freedom. And a lot of you don't want to get to that, because what happens when you get to that is you're probably going to retire, or you're going to sell your business, or you're going to buy somebody else's business. You're going to take on a new challenge, because now it's not about turning the screwdriver and making something happen and fixing computers and moving stuff to cloud. Now it's about the game of business. Now it's about taking on new challenges, doing new fun things. And the person who started your business 10, 20, 30 years before is not the person who retires in your business. You will grow, you will mature, you will become a different human being. You will probably live in a different house. You will have different friends. You might go to a different church, drive a different car. Everything in your life will be different, including you. So to think that where you are today is the path that you must always be on forever is absurd. You'll have different hobbies. You'll give up this hobby and start that hobby. So you need to realize, who are you as an evolving person, and make sure that your business supports what you want to be and where you want to go. Because you will be different. Absolutely. I mean, we all change every 3 or 4 or 5 years. What makes us think that we're not going to change in 30 years? Delegating is also a skill. You can't just give somebody a job. When you do that, you end up taking the job back. You also can't delegate and then not check in on people. I've known more than one company that had somebody that they loved and trusted who made their life so easy until they discovered that their accountant had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars for them. That does happen. So you can't walk away. You can't abdicate. You can't turn something over to a service manager and then never find out whether or not service is still being delivered the way you want it to, and that your rules are being followed and your processes are working. So you can't walk away completely when you start to delegate until you've got enough people that are at a certain level where they are then doing all the side checking for you. And you can't, once you give something away, you can't take it halfway back. You can't say, oh, I'm going to let you do the billing, but let me check on it. If two people have responsibility for something, no one is responsible. Technician knows they don't have to do it right the first time because you're going to side check them, right? You got their back, right? Because you're a good person. So technician doesn't have to do the job right the first time because you're going to side check it. So you have to learn to delegate and know it might not be done as well as you would like. It might not be perfect. It might not be the color scheme that you thought we should have. It might not be the way that we install a new system. It may not be your way. But that doesn't mean it's not a good way. You know, everybody in this room can install a system and do it differently than everybody else in the room. And all of you could be right in how you do that installation. So your way and the way are two very different things. It also requires that you have good people and you train them well. And training is key to everyone's long-term success, including your employees, which means your company. Here's two examples of delegating. If I say, set up this new SAN, period, that's it. How successful could anybody be if the instruction is option A? They'll set up something, they'll do something, who knows, right? They'll check the box, because there's only one box, done, and it might be just a ridiculous, absurd, unworkable solution. Or option B, which you don't have to read, the point is, you tell them, you're going to sit down, you're going to follow this, you're going to have a plan, you know exactly what the storage space is going to be, how many drives you're going to use, and what the RAID looks like, and da-da-da-da-da-da. You're going to figure it out, and you're going to do it step by step by step, in as much detail as you possibly can. When you delegate, you can't just say, do my taxes. That's why we're afraid of this. We're afraid it's going to get done wrong. Well, if you delegate and something is done wrong, once again, that's your fault. Because you have to delegate in a way where somebody can be successful. You have to do it a little at a time. You're not used to it and they're not used to it. So when you turn something over to a service manager and you say, you get to allocate, who does what. I had one guy, when I made him, when my brother left, this other guy became president of the company. And he said, how much freedom do I have? I said, I got to make money and you got to make that happen. So what do you want to do? And he said, I want to lay off all the technicians for a week and see how much work we can get done without them. I'm like, okay. Like, what the hell? And he ended up at the end of the week reducing the time that 2 technicians spent in the office. Because there was a lot of stuff where people, everybody knows where the slack is in their job. Everybody knows that one Taco Bell that you can stop on the way to ABC Company, right? Everybody knows how to work the system. So when you once in a while look in and say, okay, can I really do this? Part of it is you have to be willing to let them fail. You have to be willing to let them say, okay, how bad could it be if technicians didn't show up for a week, right? What would happen in your company? Because technicians sometimes don't show up. They get in auto accidents. The point is you need to walk into this slowly and you have to be careful. And then you need to check with people. And you can't let them go and do anything they want. And if they want to do something that's farther than you think is appropriate, you need to stop them and rein them in. But it literally all starts with standards and procedures, and then your belief that you can delegate, which leads to your freedom. And it's not about just handing off tasks. Once you start delegating, what's going to happen is you have to have a different job. So your job moves from being the head of the service department and the head of sales department and the head of the administrative department and so forth and so on. Now you have a job that's a very specific thing, which is managing clients, making sure that relationships grow, right? You become not at all billable and the most valuable person in the company. Because now you can work full-time on making deals. Not just doing sales, not just calling somebody and say, hey, give me $1,000. Building relationships that are going to last 20 years, which guarantees the revenue of your company. That doesn't happen by itself. And you have to have the time and the ability to spend your time on those things. And you have to start by not doing the $20 an hour crap. Don't do something that somebody else can do for $20. Don't do something that somebody else can do for $50. And you got to work your way up. You can't flip a switch and just do all of this on Monday. You've got to work your way up. And eventually, stop doing the things where somebody only gets paid $150 an hour. That's when you are finally free. And it takes a while. It takes a long while, and it takes a dedication that you're willing to do this and that it is the right decision in the long run. And then, when I say authority, you have to give them not just the task, but the authority. And we've all seen this where somebody like, I have this title, I'm the service manager, but I don't get to approve time off. And I don't get to approve the schedule. And I don't get to approve who works on these 3 clients because they're so important that, we want to make sure that we protect them. Right? So it's like, okay, I have the authority, but kind of sort of mostly, but not really. And who is most painfully aware of that? The person you have delegated to. They know you don't trust them. They know that you want them to do the stuff that you most want to get rid of, but that you still don't believe that the job can get done without you. And then you realize, okay, maybe I'm a couple columns to the left on that chart. Maybe I'm not as far evolved as I thought I was. And then you have to make sure that you've got training. And training is one of the things that people neglect more than anything else in this business. Everybody in your company, including you, needs to be training all the time. You're training here for 2 days. When was the last time your mid-level technicians went off and got some training that actually improved their ability to advance their career and their ability to serve your company? You can't just say, you are a widget. You must sit here and crank away because the machine needs you. That is not a useful way to run a business. And eventually you have to have a culture where people say, we train. We help each other. And here's a really big piece of this. People need to trust each other, which means I can tell you I made a mistake and no, it's not going to hurt my performance review and it's not going to hurt my job and I will still be employed here tomorrow. People have to be able to bring their problems to you. They have to be able to take a job and screw up and then come back to you and say, I thought I could manage this project and I can't. Help me. Here's what I did wrong and now the client's pissed off. Okay? And you don't fix it for them, you help them learn how to fix it. And the reason I say they can't be afraid, if they're afraid, they won't tell you what the mistakes are. And I believe your business is a big, complicated, interconnected system. And you cannot fix the system by fixing individuals. You fix the system by letting the individuals tell you what's wrong and fixing the system so that the individuals can be as successful as possible. And that takes step by step by step intention. Nothing happens by itself. So when you look at it that way and you've got a culture where people feel supported, they can be honest with each other, they can tell you when things go wrong, and they can tell you when they really, really, really screwed up. And there's no worry at all about telling you. Nobody's afraid to tell you that because they know that what's going to come out of that is improving your business, improving the system, working on the problems. If you don't know what the problems are, you can't fix them. You can't address them. So your employees have to be willing to try things, fail, and bring the truth to you so you can make a better checklist. You can give better instructions. You can give them more training. All of that works in on itself and becomes a repeatable cycle. And ultimately, you need to stop being the choke point, because if you're the only person who can do something, you are the choke point. There's a limit to how many sales somebody can make because you can't invoice them fast enough. You can't do collections fast enough. You can't do the work fast enough. And so if you want to stop being the choke point, how are you going to do that? And when I say if you're not working on the choke point, what's the point of fixing anything else? Whatever the choke point is, it's probably you. When I turned my business over to my brother, he created a new status in ConnectWise. And the status was waiting on Karl. Which sort of pissed me off, but it made it very visible how many things were waiting on Karl. And if this is waiting on Karl, okay, who should it be waiting on? Who should be the choke point? Well, if Karl has to approve invoicing, well, let's move the invoice to somebody else. Now we got a choke point for invoicing, but it's not Karl. We got a choke point for sales, but it's not Karl. We got a choke point for service delivery, but it's not Karl, right? One thing at a time, you eliminate those statuses, and then you disable it so it never has to be assigned again, because you're never going to be the choke point again, right? And I'm not kidding you. If you have a ticketing system, I would create a status that says, waiting on you. And just see visibly how many things come to a stop. You think it's going to flow, from, work in progress to, completed to invoicing to closing the ticket, right? Tick, tick, tick. But now suddenly, at every one of those points, there's something that's waiting on you. And when you make that visible, it's quite stunning. And I've had a couple of people that I've coached to where, we walk through this and they are literally afraid to do it because they know 90% of what's going on in the company is waiting on them. And what does that mean? It means your company cannot grow. Right? If you're the choke point, ultimately, either you work 1,000 hours a week or the company can't grow. And no matter how much you think you can work, 12, 15 hours a day, every day, for 20 years, you can't. You cannot run a marathon every day for the rest of your life. And so you have to make sure that you build a system where you're available when you need to be, but it's quite visible that you are the choke point when that happens. And ultimately, delegating means moving the choke point so that they're distributed all over the company to the right people. And there's always somebody who has to approve invoicing. There's always somebody who has to approve, closing a ticket. But it doesn't have to be you. And the system can be designed to make that as successful as possible. I also believe, and I mentioned this to a few people yesterday, employees are at a point in their career. They've got this trajectory. And I believe it is not just good to have training and mentorship. I think you are morally obligated to improve your technicians. If you have technicians who are 20, 30, 35 years old, they're not going to retire in your company. And they're probably going to be in the business for the next 30 years. Do you want them saying nice things about you or not nice things about you? Do you want them to look back and say, that's the best boss I ever had? I learned so much in that. And a lot of you have had the experience where an employee leaves, they get another job, but then pretty soon you get a call because you're the one who can fix a problem this other company has. You're the one who sells a service that nobody else provides. They become a part of your environment. Again, they're probably going to live in the same city, and they're probably going to be in the business. So make them as good as you possibly can. What you'll also discover is everybody's got hidden talents. People will come to you and they say, I know I'm doing this and I was hired for that, but I really want to figure out what I can do with graphics. I really want to figure out what I can do with telephony. I really want to figure out, something. And you give them opportunities to grow. And I think it's very important. It's good for your company. It's good for your culture. It's good for your employees. It also solves a problem that was touched on yesterday. You get level 1 techs that you think, okay, well, you can't move up. You cannot move to level 2 because I got to have you in level 1. Well, you're literally saying that they become the choke point, and imagine it from their perspective. I'm stuck in this job. I literally just got started on level 1. I'm stuck in this job. Who wants that? Nobody wants to be stuck in that job. And one of the things that training does for you and mentoring does for you is you can help them grow in place. You can help them learn a new skill set. You can help them advance in their careers. Because the worst thing that can happen is you don't train them and they have to go to another business to get an advancement. Now you've lost an employee that you should have been growing, and you've turned them into somebody who now, unfortunately, has to move somewhere else in order to advance in their career. You can solve this inside your own company. You just have to have a plan. If you haven't read Daniel Pink, Drive, this weekend is a good time to start. He looks at what motivates people specifically in the workplace. And he finds it is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. What that means is, the autonomy is somebody delegates work to them and doesn't take it back. They have the ability to make decisions, the authority to carry them out, and they don't have to side check with somebody. And the mastery is they get better and better and better at their job. Everybody wants to get better at their job. And Pink has research that shows, and it's been backed up by other people, when people get enough money, when they're at the point where they've got enough money, whatever that is for them, giving them more money does not motivate them to do better work or to do more work. What does motivate them is being given the opportunity to grow new skills, to have some independence, and to have a reason that their position in the company is important. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose, more than just money. A great example of this, I had this guy, Dan, I'll never forget it. Dan got to the point where, he was earning, $25 an hour. And every Friday, he would come in and say, hey, Manny, I got all my jobs done, and I could start another ticket, but, it's 3 o'clock. If you don't mind, I'm just going to take the rest of the day off. Okay. And he did it again and again and again and again. Like, Dan made enough money at, 36 hours a week, 37 hours a week. He was happy. And getting that extra weekend time was good for him. And he didn't need more money. So if I went to Dan and said, I'll give you $1 an hour if you pass this exam, he wouldn't care, because it's not going to motivate him. What he needs is some ability to get extra time off. So every employee is different, but everybody also has a cap, except salespeople. For whatever reason, they want all the money in the world. Other than that, most of your employees, there's a cap at what will make them happy. And then they begin to lift their nose above the grindstone and say, okay, what else can make me happy? Can help me be fulfilled in this job? People look at their jobs as part of their career. If you work at McDonald's, you got a job. If you work in IT and you see this vision of growing your skills and learning new things and moving up to level 2 and level 3 and maybe being a service manager or a project manager, maybe owning your own company someday, you're on a career path. And every one of your employees should feel like they're on a career path and not stuck in a job. If you read the Reddit on sysadmin or most of the MSP Reddit, you'll see there's a whole lot of people in large companies that hate their jobs. They're in IT and they hate their jobs every minute of the day because there's no way for them to advance. They are stuck. They will be level 1 for the rest of their lives, and they hate it. Don't let that be your company. You also have really good job descriptions. If you don't have good, clear job descriptions, you still become the choke point. Well, what exactly did you want me to do? And, if we're going to install this new system, exactly where does it fit in the big picture? Again and again and again. When you give it away, you got to give it away the right way. Not just give them all the right checklists and so forth, but make sure that, when you've given it away, it's to somebody who's got the right skills and knows exactly what they're going to do. And the beautiful thing about job descriptions, if you don't have a job description for everybody in your company, please, please, please put this as high priority for Monday. Don't go to the office. Don't tell them you're leaving. Just stay home and make these job descriptions. And here's why. A beautiful job description leads to a good ad. And if you've written it properly, all the requirements of the job description will lead you to the right questions to determine who you should hire. And then when you hire the person, those job descriptions move forward and show you what their goals should be for Q1. And then the goals for Q1 determine how they did in their evaluation for Q1 and what they're going to do in Q2, right? It flows all the way through. And it all starts with good job descriptions. And they can't just be, hey, do whatever Karl did when he was trying to get this done, right? That's not a job description. And you can't build a business on people, as odd as that sounds. Many of you, your service manager is there for the wrong reasons. They've been in the company the longest, they're your best friend, whatever, but you elevate people based on whether or not they fit what's required in the job description. And if you do that, chances are that the person who's been in the company the longest is your service manager are almost zero. Again, you've got a system that all works together, and you can't make the system work if you say, well, I'm going to define front office based around Jennifer, and I'm going to define the service manager based around Michael, and I'm going to, everything is based on these human beings. You can't do that. What does a service manager actually look like? What should it look like? And how well does this person fit? And they might fit, or they might mostly fit. They might fit with a little extra training, a little extra mentoring, but the job description has to be the job description. Because nobody who works for you today is going to retire in your company unless they're 65 today. So most of these people who work for you, you're lucky if they stay 5 years. You're super crazy over the top lucky if they stay 10 years. 20, 30 years, highly, highly unlikely. So who is going to be in that position when they leave? The beautiful part about this is, especially for technicians, once you've not dialed in exactly what your job description is, it makes interviewing and finding people much easier. And maybe there's a shortage of those people, but now you can actually find them because you've got a very clear description of who they are, what they do, and what they need to have as skills, and stuff that's kind of irrelevant. One thing at a time. Job descriptions. Absolutely one of the most valuable things you can have in your company. When you have this kind of a flow with your job descriptions, you really have achieved the next level, because now you can literally go back to technicians and say, let's go look at the job description. This stuff you're doing on the side doesn't really fit in your job description. Or you're kind of most of the way there. We need this training program so you have this skill set so you meet the job description. Help people grow in place so they don't have to move somewhere else to be satisfied in their career. These are some of the benefits of delegating. The biggest one is freedom. Once you've learned that you want to delegate and you're going to delegate first, how many of you, if you were given a new technology today, would instantly, honestly, and sincerely say, who can I hand this to? As your very first response. 1, 2, 3. So it's a difficult thing, and it takes time. And you got to work up to it. You got to make it a goal of yours. If you don't make it a goal, nobody else is going to. Nobody else is in charge of making your business successful. If you want it to happen, you've got to have a plan. But then you get all of these benefits. And it really does improve your culture when you can hand things off to people, because everybody begins to see we work together to make each other successful. One of the best things that can happen in your service department is for technicians to hold each other accountable, even when the service manager is not in the room. Right? When they say, hey, did you put your notes in the ticket? Did you put your time in? Make sure, okay, I went to this client. Hey, did you remember to do this thing with the backup? Whatever it is, they hold each other accountable to a higher level because they're in a culture of delegation. They're in a culture of competency. They're in a culture where people are allowed to criticize each other and know it's okay. And there's power in that. Now, oddly enough, there's power in people disagreeing with each other. You got to build a plan. First, go through this checklist. I want you to seriously check all of the items where you are the holdup. You are either the only person who can do it, or you're the person who has to check the person who does it. Right? Both of those keep you shackled to the business. So make a list of all the things that need to be handed off to somebody else. And then you can make a plan. Jim Collins says, first you get the right people on the bus, then you make sure that they're in the right seats. That's absolutely true. And if you haven't thought about it in those terms, look at who's in your business now. If you had these objective job descriptions, would that person be in that job? Would that person be in that job? And if they wouldn't be in any of the jobs that you have in your company, are you going to train them to be one of the people that can fit into a job description? Or do you need to find somebody else who can do that? And that's the reality of business. There may be people who, they don't want to grow, they want to get stuck, they only want to do this one thing. I'm going to sit in my cubicle, head down, lights out. I'm going to do remote tickets all day. I don't want to talk to people. All right. If you got a job description for that, good for you. Most of you don't. Figure out how you can make that work. And then you get to take a day off, or 2 or 3 or 6 or whatever. I'm a big fan of always, when I travel, I always add extra days. So if somebody takes me to Nashville, I'm going to stay a couple of extra days because what the hell, I'm in Nashville, right? And the same thing is true of, I don't know, people go to Australia and they do a job and they fly back the next day. I am not flying to Australia without staying for 2 weeks, right? And before the pandemic, so I made annual trips to Australia for about 10 years. I worked with a company down there. And so for 10 years, I'd go there, I'd stay for 2 weeks, and then it became 3. And then I realized, I could get a vacation rental condo, and I could stay for a month. And I was like, increasing, and then 2 things happened. COVID and granddaughter. And now I can't take a month in another country because I can't not see my granddaughter for a month, right? So but you have to have a plan. You can't take one day and say, oh, well, guess what? I'm going to spend 6 weeks in Australia, right? You got to work up to that. You got to do 1 week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And you have to know why you're doing it. And what I actually did in Australia is I set up office. So I did this job for 2 days, right? That got me to Australia. And then I had 3 weeks to take other jobs and to meet with IT consultants and to do other things, right? You have to have a plan and a purpose. Your time off should be as well planned as it possibly can so that you can enjoy it, right? I always stayed on a beach. I don't care what was going on. If I was in Australia, I was on a beach. Period. You can make that happen. And I know a lot of people who say, oh, I can't do that because, this. I can't do that because the clients need me on Monday, the office staff need me on Monday, people are going to call me, I have to make decisions. I'm trapped in my business. If you'd rather have the beach than being trapped in your business, you've got to make a change for that. Because nothing happens by itself. And this is me. I don't know if you know what a quokka is. Google it. Literally the cutest animals in the world. They only live on this one island off of Perth. And they're kind of cat-sized and ridiculously adorable. The best quality is they are hands. So when they see a cell phone, They go right up to it and go, oh, I'm so cute. So everybody gets a perfect picture of a quokka. So, all right, what questions do you have of me?
I think the only question I have is on your job descriptions, do you also include pay bands?
In job descriptions, so I don't include the pay band on the job description, but I do include it in the ad because, a range.
Right.
Because people have to know.
Carl.
You know,
Don't mess me up with my client over there.
when you think about you're buying something, you want to say, okay, I'm going to get into this coaching program. So you go on their website and you try to do some research, and it's like, is this $1,000, $5,000, $10,000? Like, what am I getting into? Employees are the same way. Am I applying for a $25 an hour job because F that? I am not interested, right? Am I applying for a job that's maybe more than I was expecting, or I can work from the bottom of the range, which is 80, to the top of the range, which is 120, right? What's going on? And they don't need perfect information. They just need to have some ballpark, When you do pricing, they have a thing called anchor pricing, right? You got 3 tiered price list, right? The one they kind of sort of think they want is $300 a desktop. The one that they really should have is $450 a desktop, but the $300 is kind of their anchor. If they go below that, they may not have all the services they need, right? So anchor pricing in employment is just as important. They have to have some idea what they're getting into.
So the flip to that would be, though, is if it's not when you're doing quarterly reviews, where do they see where that, like...
In my opinion, quarterly reviews and discussions of money are not related to each other. Too many people give these raises because somebody got a review. Your evaluations should be something that doesn't happen 4 times a year, and it doesn't happen 1 time a year. It should be every day, all the time. How are you doing? Are you getting your time into the system? Are you putting in your ticket? Are you putting the notes in? Are you, getting to the client's office in time? Whatever it is. All the little things that are on evaluation, they should go quarter to quarter to quarter so the employee knows how they're doing. And that's a separate discussion about whether or not you have the money for a raise or whether they've earned a raise. People don't get a raise just because they want it. If you haven't heard Brian Tracy, go find every audio program he's ever done. Brian Tracy says, your raise will become effective when you do. So I would separate those two. And again, that's just me. I think if you ever read the 1 Minute Manager, employees need to be encouraged and guided every day, 1,000 times a week. Most of you probably flew here, and even if you drove, you do not set a dot here and a dot there and go straight there. If you think about it, if you watch the map on the airplane, almost the entire time you're in the airplane is not pointed toward your destination. And yet, you'll get there, right? Because there's a correction, right? We got a path that we think we're going to take, and then something happens, and we go this way, we've got to go around a storm cloud, whatever. Correction. Employees need that in their jobs. And again, 1,000 times a week, because then it's not nagging. It's not picking on somebody. It's just the normal buzz. And that's part of when I say the culture. Everybody in the culture supports each other. Every technician says, did you put your notes in the ticket? And so the service manager doesn't have to be the only one giving that message. So the entire organization elevates itself by elevating each other. That's probably more than you wanted in your answer. Do you have a question?
For our customers, I think it makes sense.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about managed services and recurring revenue is once you sign a contract, you sort of got that as a base, and it goes up and up and up, and eventually you pay for your monthly bills. You got the internet's covered, now the rent is covered, now the employees are covered, tick, tick, tick. So I love the idea of regular increases for cost of living, and I always do it in a range so that I can round it up to a $5, so it's not, $37.24, whatever. I love that idea, and it requires that you have recurring revenue so that you can guarantee the cash flow. Because if you have break fix, you have months where you don't have the money to do that, right? So you have to be very careful. But if you put it in place, I think it's a great idea. I also think that you're correct that if somebody just stayed in their job and they just get that cost of living, that's perfectly normal and fair. If they want to raise, go learn AI. Go figure out how we can make this better. Go learn a new skill or get really, really good at your skill. One of the cool things about technology, and this has always been true, and it's more obvious with AI than ever before, while this conference is going on, some new thing will be invented. And somebody will learn it and learn it and learn it, and in 5 years, somebody will be the best in the world at that technology. And then it'll start to go downhill. So somebody in your employment could be the best in the world at some brand new technology. But they need to feel the freedom to go do that and know that they'll be supported. You know, like maybe you don't even know what this new technology is, but you know that it's going to be good for your company in the long term. I'm a firm believer anything that's related to training and advancement, it is something you should do to improve your business. I'd also say on the money question, if you still have nervousness whenever somebody's talking about money, whether it's employees, clients, job applicants, there's an issue with your willingness to delegate to others and to give up some of that control. Think about it, when you go into a client, a lot of people in our industry don't want to ask a very basic question, which you should always ask. How much money do you make? We don't want to ask that of clients, but when you do ask it, here's what you discover. Oh, we're at 7 million, but we're hoping to be by 10 million in 2 years, right? They want to tell you about their business. They want to brag about it, right? Because they have the right attitude about money, and they're not embarrassed to tell you where they are. And a lot of times we're embarrassed about where we are. Like, oh, I don't want my employees to know that, it's tough for me to give raises this year. I don't want my clients to know that, we're less than $1 million in revenue. You need to get over that. Be honest about money things, and a lot of problems go away because you stopped worrying about things that nobody cares about. A lot of people think if you tell their technicians how much money you make, they're really like, oh shit, I'm going to quit and start my own business. I'll compete with him. Nobody wants to do that. Employees are employees for a reason. 90% of them never are going to own a job or own a business or want to ever own even a part of a business. They want to do what they want to do. Their career is on a trajectory. Owning a business is not part of their equation. And this is the first place you can learn this is hire an administrative assistant or an office manager. Because they're going to see all of your money and they won't bat an eye because businesses make money. Money flows in, money flows out. When you look at the difference, you got a thing called profit, right? And they don't care whether the numbers are in hundreds of thousands or in millions of dollars. It's just numbers, and their job is to make sure the numbers are all correct, and that's what they love. And you don't have to worry that they're going to tell the world, oh, he makes this much money. Like, stop worrying about money. Money will take care of itself. You take care of the business, the money will take care of itself, I promise. Please, if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, today's a great day to do that as well.